Hi, everybody. Josh here. I want to talk to you today a little bit about my journey as an artist. So, most of you who are subscribed to this channel already know me as a riffer. You know me as the creator of comedy riffing videos. But before I ever started riffing those cheesy shorts, I was a cartoonist and an artist. I've been an artist most of my life, although I have not always acted like it, and I've not always given it the focus that I've come to realize it deserves. So, and it's been an interesting journey in recent years to see me kind of reawakening this aspect of my identity and myself, and ending up in a place where I would not have expected. So I just want to talk a little bit about my background and my tendencies as an artist, the things I've learned about myself, the things I like, and then the things I've discovered about myself and my art only recently, and why I'm beginning to incorporate my art more and more in this channel and in all of my social media and into hopefully my life and career. So I started drawing at a very young age, probably 5 or 6. I began copying cartoon characters out of the comics in the newspaper. I especially loved things like Garfield, of course, and Peanuts and Mutts. And growing up, I would read all sorts of comic strips and comic books, but I always leaned towards the cartoony and the fun, humorous stuff. So I liked Calvin and Hobbes and The Far Side. And when I was a little older, I read Gru by Sergio Aragonés, and I loved Pogo. Pogo, as far as art technique and cartoon visuals, you cannot beat Walt Kelly's Pogo. It's written in a very strange vernacular. It's filled with references that are extremely located in time, and there are Fantagraphics books that provide some commentary and context for Pogo that are very helpful. So I recommend those if you like that kind of cartooning. But yeah, so I also read Jeff Smith's Bone, itself influenced by Pogo, and I loved all the old Disney comics, the Carl Barks, Uncle Scrooge stuff, that kind of stuff, etc. Beyond that, beyond comics, as a kid, I was actually obsessed with Disney animation. Originally, I was fascinated with classic Disney animation and the Nine Old Men and the history of the Disney studio, and I would collect books about the making of. There's a very famous 1959 book about the making of Sleeping Beauty. I think it's just called Walt Disney: The Art of Animation or something like that. And I found an original copy of this, which I still have. I found it in a book sale somewhere, and that was a prized possession. And later, I saved up my money to buy Frank and Ollie's big Art of Animation, The Illusion of Life, that giant tome that they wrote about Disney animation. That was my primary obsession growing up, and I was fortunate enough to grow up into the 90s, and then not only was I already obsessed with the classic Disney animation, but now we had a renaissance with The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Lion King, and to see animation become the mainstay of Disney's output again, and to become newly obsessed with new animators. So I followed animation and was obsessive about animation the way that most kids were obsessive about sports or video games. So I knew the names of individual animators, the classic, the Nine Old Men, the Mark Davises, and or the new school, the Glenn Keanes and the James Baxters and the Mark Henn, and I was, I was into these. They were my guys and ladies, and I knew their styles and what shots they worked on, and and it was also the age of DVD, so we were getting things like the Beauty and the Beast work print. The work in progress edition would be released commercially so that you could watch. If I could have, I would have watched every Disney film in pencil test animation stage. I was obsessed with the rough pencil animation, and I considered the inking and painting to be a distraction and a compromise over what the animators' work that they had done. So that's where I come from. I like cartoons. I like cartoon animals. I like colorful, rounded, bubbly, expressive animation type artwork. And so as I began to develop, my own art, I was mostly as a kid just aping things that I enjoyed and just copying things and coming up with things that were suspiciously similar to the stuff that I was obsessed with. It's also important to state at this point that I recognize in myself certain limitations. I am not a savant or a prodigy with like boundless depths of artistic talent. I recognize that I have a modicum of talent at drafting and cartooning and sketching, and that if I work at it, I can even exceed my own expectations of myself. But it is a lot of work. I mean, all art is, and any artist worth their salt will tell you that if you're just staying in one spot and doing easy things and copying yourself over and over and over again, then you're not growing. It should be hard work. But even to get to that point, even to get to the point where I'm happy with anything, it is a lot of work. And I think there's several factors in my life that converged essentially in me kind of dropping art by the wayside. I was poised to go to art school to study animation. In fact, I was accepted to the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, which had at the time in the 90s a Disney animation pipeline where you could train specifically to become a Disney animator. The industry has changed a lot. I don't know if that program is the same. I don't imagine it is. The inroads to that industry are very different now. Disney's not the only game for animators, and it's a different world, I think, for the better. But for me personally, that was my track. And then, again, recognizing my own limitations, really confronting what actual back-breaking hard work animation is in particular, the endless drafting of the same things over and over and over again. And then some other aspects of my personal life that I won't get into here led me to choose instead to take a more traditional route of school and study communications and production and video and writing and a few other things, kind of the catch-all creative person degree. If you're not going to do art or specifically film school or something like that, you study communications, and then you figure out what you're going to do later. So that was a major fork in my life where I could have pursued the art career full-time, and I didn't. And then over the years, as I adulted and as I figured out things in life, I was not focusing on art, but it would always be there. And once I became a content creator, once I started to make stuff online and share stuff online, be it writing and some audio recordings and some silly videos and things like that, I did always kind of fall back on the ability to draw, and that took the form of multiple webcomics. So I created a couple of webcomics, one called Chronicle and one called Struth. And there's actually been two versions of Struth. One was just gag comics, and then another one where I actually turned it into a talking animal adventure comic, and I did one book's worth of material. And along the way, I've done other single issue comics and some flash animation and things like that. But it was always an attempt to create content that I thought was going to succeed and be well received, and I was always wrong. That was always a miscalculation, and it also happened to always be a lot of extra work beyond just the drawing. If you're making a webcomic, you need to write, and I've always been a one-man show, just as I am with Fun with Shorts. If I made a comic, I was writing, I was drawing, I was inking, I was lettering, I was laying out the website, I was publishing. So that's a lot of work. And the actual stuff that I love, the drawing of faces and expressions and characters, was just one piece of the puzzle. So I would always get to a point where I realized this is not going anywhere, my audience isn't growing, or they don't even exist, and I can't force this to go, and it's so much work I couldn't justify it, so I would always just pack it in and then move on. And then that led to a kind of a long period of many years where I didn't do anything with my art. And I think I had even resigned myself to the fact that it would just go away, that it didn't work out. I already recognized the limitation of my talent, and maybe it was time to just let go of it altogether. Fast forward to 2019, 2020, and pandemic, and everybody's kind of getting a chance to rethink everything they do. I think everybody, among all the unpleasantness of that experience, there was the opportunity to examine ourselves and where we were and what we were doing with our lives. And I suddenly became convinced that it was wrong to let go of that part of me that enjoyed creating art. And in fact, this was a central defining aspect of myself. Even if I hadn't fostered it, even if I hadn't taken good care of it over the years, it was still there, still part of who I am. And in some way, it was a gift that I was squandering. So the big revelation that changed the direction of my life a couple of years ago was that I need to not only dabble back in art, but I need to actually discover, I need to tap into this part of myself. And I had real clarity that I need to be an artist. I am an artist, so I need to start acting like I am an artist. And so that was all good, and I feel like I've been on that track ever since. Where I didn't realize I needed to learn a few more lessons was in the details of what exactly I was going to do. Because all I had known up to that point in trying to be a content creator, you got to make that content, you got to monetize, you got to get it out there. I thought, well, it's time to make the ultimate webcomic. So I set about creating and drawing, and I really pushed myself. I took some online art classes. I bought myself an iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil. I invested in all of this stuff, and I started working hard, and I created a comic strip, and I made 12 full-color comic strips just to launch. That nobody even knew that I was doing this yet, and I was going to launch and have this small backlog all ready to go. And I hit a wall and started to burn out before I had even launched the thing. And so between that and then a kind of a chilly reception when I finally did launch the thing, launching it to kind of a thud, and a lot of friends who were like cheering me on about the art and like, yay, you should do art. No one was really particularly excited about the work though. And so this led to another giant epiphany for me. And that was, just because I can write and lay out and color and produce a comic, just because I know how to do all those various aspects of that pipeline doesn't mean that I should. That I had kind of just trapped myself in this very limited idea that me being an artist meant me being a cartoonist and specifically making a webcomic and having to always have a webcomic or I'm not an artist. So that was part two of that realization, of that epiphany, was that no, an artist is someone who creates a thing that they're compelled to create, to express themselves, primarily for the purpose of expression and for pleasure and for whatever that thing is that we're pursuing when we create art. And then anything else about anybody else enjoying it or a platform or any of that stuff is secondary. That's not where you start. And I was starting with the platform. I realized that what I needed to do was just back to the drawing board, quite literally, and figure out what kind of artist I am and what is going to give me the most satisfaction, and also realistically what's going to work and not burn me out, because I have a full-time job. I have a Patreon where I riff cheesy shorts. I have all kinds of stuff going on, family and work and life. If I'm going to fold art into that and actively pursue, it can't be a burden. It can't be, if it feels like homework or a burden, then something's wrong and you shouldn't bother. So I spent some time, in the wilderness there, creatively thinking about it. And then it just hit me one day that what I really, really like, what brings me the most joy in the actual nuts and bolts of creating those comics was drawing faces and expressions and emotions and characters. So I realized, from all the way back when I was copying those characters out of the comics, the thing that's given me joy all along was faces. Faces of people, characters, animals, just cartoon or portraits. I became swiftly obsessed with drawing faces, be they from popular culture, be they things that I am making up or adaptations or portraits or caricatures. it kind of gave me this weird laser focus on what I wanted to do. I didn't need to write any scripts. I didn't need to lay out any panels. I didn't even worry about a website or anything. I was just me and my blank digital canvas and my Apple Pencil and whatever I felt like doing. And so since then, I've drawn hundreds of faces. I've drawn, fan art. I've been hired to illustrate and to draw portraits for people. And now I'm at the point where I'm ready to start bringing this into my channel and kind of broadcasting this part of myself and interacting with you guys, my viewers, to see where this goes and where the next level is for my art. So that's what the sketchy videos are here on my channel. It's just every time I draw something that I think it might be of interest, or be it an experiment or some itch that I'm scratching, something that I feel like I just have to draw, or a challenge or something like that, I'm going to share that with you and invite you to interact and give me ideas, or just enjoy looking at it. So I feel like I'm not done. I feel like there's new places to go, but this is the story, very simply, of how I got out of my own way, how I decided to live into the part of myself that is an artist, but then got out of my own way with the imagined expectations of others. And if I was going to encourage you in whatever it is that you're trying to get at in your creativity or your art or your whatever it is that you're doing, consider the simplicity of getting back to like the essence of what it is you love to do. If you feel like formats or platforms or social media or the expectations of other people or the things you expect of yourself, if those things are getting in the way, I would just encourage you to step back, take some time, and don't be afraid to make some cuts and edits and figure out your deal. Take the time to do it. It's worth it. It feels great. It's incredibly gratifying. And so now I feel like I am doing right by myself first, and then it's just gravy on top of that if anybody likes to look at it or hire me, or just if we can have a even that's I've talked about in some of my sketchy videos, that spark of recognition. That's what I'm chasing. And when I draw a face, is I want to see or a character, I want to see a thing that I like looking at, and it pleases me to recognize it, and it pleases me that I did the work of putting it on a page. And then if you can add to that this kind of virtual connection with someone viewing my art, and if we can both be, even if it's not at the same exact moment, if we can both be getting that pleasure out of a piece of art, be it silly or emotional or fun or weird or whatever, I think that's when you're really hitting the highs, right? And that's what I'm going to be chasing from here on out. So that's it. I just wanted to catch you up to speed and explain to you why I draw the weird things that I draw. And I'm going to keep doing it. So I invite you to come along for the journey. You can support me on Patreon. You can become a member here on the channel, or you can just watch and like and share, and whatever works for you. Thank you so much for your time. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.